Okay, so this is lesson 1 in the graphs unit for Workplace Math 10. We're going to talk about line graphs today. So line graphs are typically used to visualize data that shows trends over time. So that's the key thing, trends over time. And then it helps us see patterns of when that data is going up or down. So let's look at an example where we interpret a graph and then we're going to create a line graph. So this line graph shows the average monthly rainfall in millimeters for each month in Vancouver, BC. Okay, so the reason we use graphs is because it's very visual. I can understand this data set pretty quickly just by looking at it, right? I have these really high periods of rain at the beginning and the end of the year, and then much lower rain in the middle of the year when it's the summertime. Okay, so on the bottom of the graph, I've got months. They're just represented with the first letter of each month. And then on the y-axis, the vertical axis, I've got total rainfall. Really important to kind of, when you first look at a graph, read the axes, see what everything is being measured by. Okay. All right, so it says which month has the most rain? Estimate how much rain typically falls in that month. Okay, so let's go to the highest. I'm just going to unhighlight this. Okay, so the highest data point that I see is this one here. This would be represented by November. And let's see how much data or how much rainfall we get in that month. It looks like it's right about at 180, although it could be like one or two higher than 180. It could be 181 or 182. It's hard to tell exactly, but it looks like it's right about at 180. And we need to use the proper units. So a good graph will always tell you what units we're measuring in. So it says total rainfall in millimeters. So that's how much rain is falling in that whole month of November, typically on average. Okay. Now it says which month has the least rain. So again, we're going to find the lowest data point. It looks like it's this one here. It looks like it's just a little bit less than 30. A little bit less because the point is just below the line there. And it's in July. So maybe like 29. Again, hard to tell exactly. So what general trends do you notice? Again, this is the whole point of having a line graph, is you can kind of see the patterns and the trends really quickly. So it seems like we have really high rainfall in the winter and lower in the summer. Right? So that's kind of the trend. Okay. Let's do an example where we actually create a line graph. Now, before we create the line graph, let's just look at this one and see what features we need to include. And I'll just highlight them as I talk about them. We need to include labels. That's really important. So what are we measuring on the y-axis? We're always going to be measuring time on the x-axis. Okay. Where important, we need to put units. How are we measuring it? Like millimeters. We need to include a good title. Average monthly rainfall in Vancouver, BC. Descriptive title. The other thing that's really important is we need to choose a good scale for our graph. And our scale should always be starting at 0. Okay, so notice here I've chosen, the graph is taking up most of the grid, right? So I've chosen to go up by 30 here when making this graph. And notice every single data point goes up by 30, 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180. That's so that the data is represented accurately and spaces between data points are consistent. So you want to choose a consistent scale, but also one so that your data is using most or all of the grid, so that you can see as much detail as possible. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that here. Now let's write those things down. So we need a title. We need labels, include units where possible. We need a consistent scale, right? And you always start at 0. If you don't start at 0, it might skew your data so that the changes look more extreme than they really are. Okay, so it says Kate is a small business owner who sells ceramic mugs and bowls online. Below is a table showing her revenue each month for the past year. Create a line graph to display the data. Okay, so let's start with the labels. Let's make a title. So we're doing monthly revenue. So monthly revenue for Kate's business. There's no one exact name or title that's like the best, but as long as you're being descriptive and explaining what the graph is showing, then that's a good title. Okay, now also we need to do the labels for the axes. So time always goes on the x-axis or the horizontal axis. That's just by convention so that everyone has the same graph. So we're going to put the months here. So I'll do the same thing as the other graph did. I'll just use the first letters so that my graph doesn't look too cluttered. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Okay. Then on the y-axis, I'm going to put the revenue. Now, what I like to tell students is labeling every second grid line, especially if there's a lot of grid lines, is kind of nice because otherwise it looks really cluttered with the labels. So let's see what I need to get up to. My highest data point here is $1,200. That's the most. So, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total grid lines here. And you want to pick something to go up by that's kind of nice, like a nice number. So let's see what I have here. I'm going to just turn on my calculator. 1,200. Let's see if I divide that by 6, what I get. Oops, I forgot a 0. 200. Oh, that's a nice number to go up by. Perfect. I'm going to go up by 200. And remember, always starting at 0. So 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200. That way I'm going to use most of the graph. And I'm going to get a good representation of my data set. Okay, so now we're just going to go one at a time and plot the points. So let's start with January. So January, my revenue is 400. So I'm going to go to January on the x-axis, and I'm going to put a point up at 400. And then I'm going to do, so I'll kind of cross them off as I put them on the grid. February, 450. So 450 is halfway between 400 and 500. 500 is this grid line here. So it's going to be about halfway between 4 and 5. So about there. Okay, that one's done. March, 400. Okay, let's put that here, right at 400. Done. April, 600. Okay, let's go up to 600. Okay, that's done. 750 for June. Okay, so I have to go halfway between 700 and 800. So 700 is this line, 800 is this line, so I'm halfway between those two. Okay, June. I think I've missed one here. I missed May. May is 800. Oops. Let's do that first. And then June is 750. Thought I had a good system going by crossing off, but I did not, clearly. July is 700. That's right here, halfway between 6 and 8. August is 900. Which is halfway between 800 and 1,000. September is 1,000. October is 1,500. That's going to be halfway between 1,000 and 1,100. November is 1,100 and December is 1,200. Okay. So now you want to connect your points with a line. You want to use a ruler. Now my screen doesn't allow me to use a ruler nicely, so I'm just going to do my best to connect these with straight lines. There we go. Okay. So we can see the general trend. At the beginning of the year, making less, and then she started making more. So it increased throughout the year. What was the total increase in revenue over the year? Okay, so we started at 400 and we got all the way up to 1,200. So we see that's an increase of $800. Okay, so that probably makes sense. People are probably buying a lot more, especially if it's ceramic mugs and bowls around Christmas time, I would imagine. Also, maybe she's just selling more because her business is growing.